The Winter War is only 1 week old. For the world watching, it is already a foregone conclusion. The Soviet Colossus, with its endless waves of tanks and men, has smashed into the tiny nation of Finland. The expectation, in Moscow and in global capitals, is a swift, administrative march to Helsinki. But in the dense, roadless forests north of Lake Ladoga, the Red Army is not just advancing. It is racing towards a strategic prize. The Soviet 139th Rifle Division has captured the town of Tolvajärvi and is now thrusting west. Their objective is clear: break through the sparse Finnish defenses at a place called Tolvajärvi. If they succeed, they can swing south like a hammer, slamming into the rear of Finland's main defensive line, the Mannerheim Line, and potentially decide the war in a matter of weeks. At Finnish headquarters, the gravity of the situation is starkly apparent. Marshal Mannerheim, Finland's commander-in-chief, knows that defeatism is a luxury they cannot afford. He makes a critical decision, sweeping aside the normal chain of command. He appoints a charismatic and aggressive officer, Colonel Paavo Talvela, to take personal charge of the collapsing sector. Talvela's orders are brutally simple: stop the retreat and seize the initiative. Talvela arrives to find a tactical nightmare. The terrain around Tolvajärvi is a natural trap. It's a labyrinth of dense boreal forest, broken by long, finger-like lakes. The only routes for an army are the narrow passages of frozen ground between these bodies of water. The lakes themselves, now frozen solid, can be crossed by troops and even vehicles, but their glassy, white surfaces offer absolutely no cover against enemy fire. It is a defender's dream, but for the Finns, the defenders are in full retreat. To execute his plan, Talvela is given fresh units from Mannerheim's strategic reserve. He places the most critical task, the point of contact, in the hands of Lieutenant Colonel Pajari and his Infantry Regiment 16. These are not grizzled veterans. They are reservists, family men and workers mobilized from the industrial city of Tampere. They are citizen soldiers, now rushing headlong towards a crisis. As Pajari's column approaches Tolvajärvi, the horizon ahead begins to glow. It is the light of burning buildings. Following a scorched earth policy, Finnish border villages are being evacuated and put to the torch to deny the enemy shelter. Beneath this apocalyptic sky, Pajari finds not a defensive line but a rout. Dispirited, exhausted soldiers drift back along the road in small, leaderless groups. They are driven not by orders, but by the primal instinct to survive. They have the 1,000-yard stare of men who have seen too much. Pajari does not hesitate. He stands in the middle of the chaos, a rock in a human river. He stops the stragglers, his voice cutting through the panic. He rebuilds their units on the spot, reissues ammunition, and turns them around. With sheer force of will, he pushes the line back into position just east of Tolvajärvi. But even as the Finns stabilize, the Soviet 139th Rifle Division secures the key terrain, the high ground, and the eastern exits of the passes. They are exhausted from their advance, but they are there, and they begin to dig in. Colonel Talvela understands a fundamental truth of war. Time is a weapon. He refuses to let the enemy have it. He will not wait for them to build impregnable defensive lines. He wants to strike now, while the Soviets are still catching their breath, to shake them before they can settle. The plan is set for the early hours of December 9th. Pajari will lead a night raid towards a critical choke point called the Kivisalmi Strait. His striking force is small but mobile, 2 companies of men on skis. At the same time, a separate Finnish battalion will create a diversion by putting pressure on the frozen front near Kotisaari. The goal is to pull Soviet attention away from Pajari's main movement, to confuse their sense of where the real threat is forming. Pajari's men move out into the frigid night. Skiing through the dense, trackless woods is slow, arduous work. They stumble through the darkness, navigating by compass and instinct. After what feels like an eternity, they notice a strange glow at the edge of the trees, just over a low ridge. It's the light of campfires. Peering across the frozen ice of the lake and into the trees near Kivisalmi, Pajari's men see the enemy. A Soviet unit has stopped for the night. They have gathered around roaring fires, warming themselves, eating their dinners, and resting. Their belief in the Finnish retreat is so complete that they have posted few sentries. They are silhouettes against the flames, perfect targets. Pajari doesn't attack immediately. He has all the time in the world. He methodically brings his men around the glow, positioning them to select the best possible fields of fire. The Soviets, warm and drowsy, have no idea that death is watching them from the darkness. The silence is shattered by a concentrated storm of rifle and Suomi submachine gun fire. It crashes into the camp at point-blank range. The effect is devastating. In less than 4 minutes, the position is annihilated. The survivors flee in panic into the night. But Pajari knows his time is limited. As Soviet reinforcements, roused by the gunfire, begin to arrive from the main road, he gives the order to withdraw. The Finns fade back into the forest as silently as they came. Behind them, in the darkness, the newly arrived Soviet units hear only their own panicked comrades. They open fire on shadows and sounds, unable to comprehend where the attack came from, or where it has gone. The following days, December 9th and 10th, are deceptively quiet. The front settles into an eerie calm, marked only by reconnaissance patrols and the back-breaking, miserable work of digging foxholes into ground as hard as granite. But it is the calm before the storm. In the early hours of December 11th, Lieutenant Colonel Pajari is returning from the rear areas to the front lines at Tolvajärvi. As he travels, the road ahead begins to speak. First, scattered rifle cracks, then the urgent rattle of heavier fire. He arrives near his own artillery battery to find his men lying along the roadside. The road, they tell him, has been cut by the enemy. A Soviet battalion has executed a daring maneuver, slipping around the Finnish northern flank on skis and infiltrating deep into the rear area. They are now hitting the soft underbelly of the division. Supply wagons, horse lines, and support troops. Medics and field kitchen personnel, men who have never fired a rifle in anger, are scattering into the forest, running for their lives. The Soviet troops have marched and skied hard through the bitter cold to get here. They are famished, frozen, and utterly spent. When they stumble into the Finnish supply area, they find something irresistible. Field kitchens, still hot, with pots still steaming. The aroma of a thick, salty sausage soup fills the freezing air. In a moment of sheer humanity, but colossal tactical error, they decide to stop. They huddle around the Finnish stoves to eat. It is an understandable decision in the brutal cold, but it is a fatal one. Pajari, hearing the gunfire and realizing the danger, reacts instantly. He doesn't wait for orders. He gathers roughly 100 men, a mix of headquarters staff, artillerymen, and recovered stragglers, and launches an immediate counterattack. The fight, which will later be sardonically nicknamed the Sausage War, rages through the short Arctic night. It is a desperate, close-quarters battle among the trees and overturned supply sleds. By dawn, the road is reopened. The Soviet survivors, their bellies full of Finnish soup, are dead or captured. The Sausage War was a dangerous disruption to Colonel Talvela's timetable. It proved how fluid and unpredictable the battle for the frozen wilderness could be. But it did not change his strategic intent. The enemy had been bloodied, confused, and delayed. The main counterattack, an ambitious plan to encircle and destroy the Soviet division, was still on. Talvela now has a clearer picture of his enemy. Pajari has proven his men's mettle. The stage is set for a decisive blow. In the next episode, we will follow the execution of that plan, as the Finns unleash their full fury on the trapped Soviet division in the ice and fire of Tolvajärvi. Thank you for watching. If you want to see the conclusion of this pivotal battle, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch the next episode from the front lines.